Hello lads, hope you're well. Today I wanted to talk about accountability. I wanted to talk about accountability in the sense of how it creates freedom. And that may sound like an odd thing to say, taking account for things, taking accountability for things, taking responsibility for things you'd think would actually narrow your freedom. But I wanted to explain how, in my opinion, taking accountability and taking responsibility for things actually frees you even more. The reason I believe accountability is important and taking responsibility is important and why it gives you freedom is because as soon as you can say, it's not my fault, it's just a cop-out. It makes things easier for you. But at the same time, it also means you don't have control over the situation. A really common example of this is when it comes to weight loss. And I, again, absolutely speaking from experience here, you know, I've still got a few chins that I need to shred before the end of summer. And it's something that I've really struggled with over the years. One of the many reasons that I've really struggled with it is I've had the it's not my fault attitude, and I've had the no accountability. And the reason that creates a problem is because when I say, oh, I can't lose weight because of this, or I can't lose weight because of that, what that's actually saying is I'm just chubby, I'm just fat, and that's that. I've got no control over it. No matter what I do, no matter how hard I want it, it is what it is, and there's nothing I can change. How depressing is that? You don't want that. The reason accountability in these situations is so powerful is because the second I go, yep, I'm a bit chubby, yep, I'm a bit overweight, but if actually I speak to someone who's knowledgeable, and I'm very lucky to have a best friend who's really into all of this, and I get some advice, if I actually measure out my calories, measure what my intake is, measure what I need to cut, if I track my food, yes, it's boring, yes, it's effort, yes, it's not always particularly fun living in a calorie deficit, but actually, if I took the responsibility and accountability to do that, after a couple of weeks, I'm going to really notice that I've lost weight, because that's how the human body works. The reason I use weight loss is, one, it's so common, and two, there's so many things out there that basically try to make you feel better about the fact that you're not losing weight and take accountability away from you. If you have all these stupid Herbalife teas or these metabolism fat pills and things like that people like James Middleton absolutely shred to bits. One of the reasons I love James Middleton. If you don't follow him, follow him. Anyway, side tangent. Things like this give people the opportunity to go, not my fault. It's not my fault. I've got no accountability. I'm not responsible for my weight. And obviously there are certain situations with specific medical conditions, or maybe even to an extent certain genetics. Some people are just built differently. Some people's bodies react differently to different things. Personally, I definitely notice the difference when I cut out sugar and pasta and when I stick to potato and rice as my source of carbs. I'm quite lucky in the sense of I don't feel like I put on loads of weight when I drink Guinness. If I drink lager, it makes a huge difference. But at the end of the day, push comes to shove, the reality is it's calories in, calories out. And again, I'm using weight loss as a specific example because it's one that so many of us can relate to. Another thing is the gym, lifting weights. Again, something I've really struggled with over the years. If you have a thing where you can just go, yeah, I've got rubbish genes. I've got rubbish genes. There's nothing I can do. I'm just skinny. Always have been, always will be. I'll never be able to bulk up. I'll never be that strong. But you're taking zero accountability for the situation. Are you really telling me that if you actually not just got in the gym and had a get, if you took the time to research, find a program and really give it a try, you telling me after 6 weeks of going to the gym consistently, lifting weights in the correct way, you don't think you get stronger? That's a load of rubbish. Again, caveat for any specific medical conditions, but even so, there are very few medical conditions in which you physically would not be able to do anything gym-wise. 4 open heart surgeries, I'm not Arnold Schwarzenegger, but I go to the gym no problem. Obviously, so far I've talked about one specific example, but to move this on to other things and more real world examples and how a lack of accountability can actually be dangerous. This isn't a politics channel, it never will be, because I'd have 0 followers and I'd probably wind a lot of people up. But one of the huge problems with certain political systems is there's no accountability. Here in the UK, we have that, unfortunately. We have a Prime Minister who takes 0 accountability for his actions, but the way our system is set up, until said Prime Minister calls a general election, we don't really, as a country, have the power to do anything. Not to get too into it, but his internal party can do things as they want to, but that's a choice up to them. As a voter, as someone who is not in Parliament, I had a vote in 2019, I will get a vote again in 2024, but in that 5-year period, if that politician does something I don't like or completely wrecks the country, there is no accountability, because there is no mechanism for the general public to get them out. Again, this isn't a politics channel, I'm not trying to make a political point. My point is, when there is a lack of accountability, it can actually lead to much bigger issues. So obviously that's on a countrywide level or a national level. Starting with accountability for yourself, saying the phrase, I'm going to take responsibility for everything in my life starting today, is going to have a huge effect on you. I can't remember exactly who the story was. It was about a very famous artist, but it's in Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. I try not to swear on my channel. But he talks about this guy was just all over the place, he was nobody, he was going 0 through life. I think he had a bad illness and he blamed everyone but himself, and then he said, as an exercise, for 1 month, I'm going to take absolute responsibility for every decision I make. Long story short, in the end he became I think it was an artist or a writer, millionaire, sold hundreds of thousands and millions of copies. And again, linking it back to the title of the video, accountability is freedom, because you feel so much more control when you can say, I have responsibility for all my decisions. I'm accountable for the decisions I make, because that means you can start to move your life in the direction that you want to. Accountability is also a trait that you want to look at in other people. If you're someone who's hiring, or even a partner or something like that, we all know that person who you'll bring up a criticism of some sort, and before you've even got the sentence out of your mouth, they go, oh, it's not my fault. It wasn't me. I must have been this other person. I didn't do it. No one wants to work or even be friends with those kinds of people. Like, the people we really respect the most, let's be honest, is if something hasn't happened at work or whatever, they turn around and literally in their meeting put their hand up and go, yep, I was tasked with that, I forgot, I didn't do it, whatever it is. And as much as people might go, oh, like, you should have done it or whatever, everyone kind of goes, you know what, fair play. Fair play, he just sat there and put his hand up and said it was me. They took accountability for it. And what that means is, this problem will now be fixed. If everyone just sits there and obfuscates and passes it on to other people, problems don't get fixed, which is another huge problem with accountability. And it's one of the reasons that the military is so anal with their structuring of hierarchy. And speaking of military, a really good book on this topic is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. He's really famous. He's the bald, I think he was ex-Marine, but he's a Navy SEAL, sort of couldn't look more military if he tried. But yeah, he did I think it's one of the top 10 TED Talks ever about accountability and ownership and owning your actions. He talks about how accountability saves lives on the battlefield, because if something goes wrong or whatever, or if they need someone to step up and come up, it can't be, oh, who's in charge, I'm not in charge, you're in charge. They have to go, no, I'm in charge, it's my decision. And when you take that decision, the risk is on your shoulders, but the reward is also on your shoulders. If something goes wrong, they know exactly who to turn to. If something goes right, they know exactly who to thank. I'll close off the video because I don't want to keep going in circles. But in terms of message from this video, and if there was sort of one specific action or whatever to take from it, I'd say just even if for the next week, just look at everything in your life and say, right, what can I take responsibility for? What can I do to take a little bit more control in my life? And it might not be nice to admit that these things are my responsibility. It might not be fun. It might be boring. But what can I do to just take ownership of certain elements of my life that I think will improve things? Because I think you'd be shocked that in a few weeks, probably, you'd notice your life's in a completely different place. Another one that always makes me laugh, and you've probably got stories like this with your friends, is people who moan about their relationships they're in. And I think this is such a this one's really interesting because it's so glaringly obvious, because there isn't really two sides to it. And people moan about their relationships and they talk like they've been put in this relationship. They talk like they can't break up with the person, or they didn't ask the person out. And as someone who's not in a relationship, you look on, you go, well, just break up with them then. Or why did you ask them out in the first place? But you'll have people who generally talk to you like, oh God, yeah. Oh yeah, she's such a nightmare. Oh, she's this. Oh shit. And again, I've been that person. Lucky that I've got mates who will look at me and go, why don't you break up with her then? But yeah, that's a slight side tangent, but I think that's another good example of how people will just do anything to not take responsibility for their actions. Look, I'll leave it there. I think I've drilled my point home enough. Thank you for making it all the way to the end. If you did find any of this useful, please do consider liking and subscribing. As always, comment any other advice you have below, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care, lads.